Hi, I'm Jacob Robert Perry.
And I'm Noah Simonson.
And today we are joined by a very special guest, Robby Slaughter, one of the candidates running for United States Congress for the state of Indiana. Mr. Slaughter, thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
I would like to, if you wouldn't mind answering a few questions.
Absolutely.
I'd like to ask, what party are you for?
So unlike the other candidates, I'm not with any party. I'm an independent candidate. And what that means is that I'm not affiliated with any political party or any other candidate. I am truly here just for the voters.
So when it comes to changing things for school, how does the system work, and when you want to change something?
Well, that's a great question. So we should talk about how schools operate today, how they're funded, and how they're structured. And a lot of that has to do with the history of the country and how things came together. So traditionally speaking, schools are funded locally. That is, your local property tax dollars fund schools. And in a place like Indiana, that money goes downtown Indianapolis to be distributed by the state using a school funding formula, and then is sent back out to the schools. But lots of the money and support for schools comes from the community as well. It comes from booster clubs, it comes from donations from businesses, it comes from parents and families that are able to help out with different kinds of needs. So schools are actually funded and supported in part by your local tax dollars, your statewide tax dollars, but also by local communities. The federal government's role in education is to provide some guidance and some grant support. And that's one of the key things people don't understand about schools, is that schools are really driven entirely by what's happening in your local community. And the more opportunity to improve schools, to make them better for students and for parents and families, and to help people find better opportunities when they leave school and move on, is really rooted in that community, providing opportunities to move forward and to be able to be more successful within that community structure.
Okay. I would like to ask, how hard would it be for you if you wanted to make a change?
Well, that's a great question. I think that the first question is, what changes should be made? And I think the biggest challenge we face with schools right now is that we have tremendous inequity in our school programs. If you look just in our district, the 5th Congressional District, which includes all of Madison County, where we are here in Anderson right now, but also includes Howard County, Kokomo, out in Grant County with Marion, Delaware County with Muncie area, but also Tipton and Hamilton County. You compare, say, Anderson Community Schools with Carmel Clay Schools, which is the Carmel School District. The difference in the quality and opportunity of education there is dramatic, even though it's the same state and it's less than an hour drive between the two locations. So in order to increase equity, increase the opportunity for everyone, we need to make sure that we have programs in place that are designed to grow the success of all students. And as a member of Congress, I want to advocate for everyone in our community, kids who are in rich schools and kids who are in challenge schools as well, and everyone in between. And I think the real issue is, what are the ideas and how do we work together to solve the problems that we have?
Who would have the final say in that, and how exactly do you plan on doing this?
So the final say in your educational experiences happen at the local level. Your school board decides what the curriculum is and where the funding goes. My role as a member of Congress would be to help provide stronger funding support, stronger grant programs for the kinds of things that help students get to the next opportunity in life. You look at the program here for broadcasting, for example. We can establish grant programs through the Department of Ed or other services. We can create stronger incentive and loan programs for schools to be able to grow specific activities. But it's important that each district, through its school board and its community members, decide what's best for that area. Because a member of Congress doesn't know what's best everywhere in the country. Who knows what's best is in that school individually, with the students, faculty there, and the school board and the local community.
If these changes that you wanted to do theoretically didn't work out as well as you wanted to, how would you fix them?
I think that's a great question too. All progress is about compromise and mutual activity. We have to work with people with all points of view, to advance the causes that are important to us. So every time someone has an idea, you may not be able to implement it fully. You may get part of it done and have parts that are unfinished, but you got to keep working. You've got to keep collaborating, keep finding ways to come up with new and inventive solutions. And I think that's like anything in life. You have to keep moving forward. Even if you don't get what you want the first time around, you got to try again and keep on trying. And to me, it's about persistence. And that's the reason I'm here, is I have persisted through this process to be on the ballot in November. And I'd like to persist on your behalf as voters of our community and as students who are going to be going into the world, and be your support, to be your advocate in Washington and beyond.
I've got to ask, if things were to say go down the gutter, would you end up stepping down or like kind of giving up in that nature?
I think you have to define what go down the gutter means. We have problems in our country right now. There are things that are in terrible shape. And one thing that you might notice as students of journalism is how difficult it is to get accurate and factual information now. That really colors the quality of our dialogue. It reduces our ability to be successful because we just don't know what's true anymore. And so when things do fall down, it's important for us to work together to try and make things better. And I don't see myself quitting. I'm not a person who wants to walk away from a challenge. And to me, we have to keep moving forward to be successful. So yes, we have serious problems, but I don't want to quit just because the chips are down.
All right. How would, say, fixing that lack of information help students here in Anderson?
Well, here's a great question. If you think about Anderson High School, what do people know about the school and what do students have information on that might be inaccurate? How do we help to address those understandings of how the school system works and how you can advocate for things? For example, I would argue that most students aren't aware that there's a school board for ACH, which helps to define curriculum, helps to identify how schools grow and change, how it identifies what additions are made, what budgets are set, etc. And I think that when students have that information, they can be actively engaged in the process of improving their own schools. And so doing more work to integrate that into the curriculum in your government classes, in your everyday classes, what's happening in the school board, what's happening in Anderson with the city council, with the county council, so that you know what's going on and you can go to those meetings and you can write your legislators or write your city councilors or write your school board and advocate for what makes the most sense. And after all, who should be on the school board but students themselves? Many communities now are bringing students into the school board to give testimony, to give their experiences. And I think it's great when students, when they graduate, run for school board themselves so they can say, hey, I was just there, I was just in the school system, I can advocate for what makes the most sense on behalf of my fellow students.
With certain problems going on in the school board, for example, our rapidly declining test scores, how would you expect students who were to run for the school board to help out in that area?
Well, so I think the first thing is that we have to identify what's most important. Test scores are a metric that are commonly used across school systems to try to evaluate how things are going. But if you are a student in school, you know that a test score does not tell you very much about how much you understand, how well you're doing in school, how well you feel integrated in your community, and how optimistic you are about your prospects. A test score is only one measure, and I think we need to look at other ways to measure as well. And no one is in a better position than students who are in school or have recently graduated to speak to that reality. If you're an administrator or if you're a school board member who hasn't been in a school building in decades yourself as a student or otherwise, it's harder for you to understand what the reality is like because school is different than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. The experiences of students are different. The technology is different, the culture is different, the opportunities are different, and that means we have to look beyond simple measures.
All right, so we're going to kind of drift away from school-related questions.
Sure.
If you won this election, would you want to go for like governor of Indiana or anything past that with more power?
No, not at all. And I also think it's bad form for politicians to focus on future offices instead of the one they're in now. In fact, I think one of the major challenges we have of our country right now is that instead of public service being about service, it's really about people's ego. People say, oh, I want to run for this office so that I can get to the next office, so that I can have more power and more money and more control over things. I'm focused on running for Congress so that I can serve the people of the 5th District for the next 2 years. And that's it. That's the entirety of my horizon. And I feel like anytime a politician tells you they're looking to re-election, they're looking to the next higher office, that means they aren't focused on serving the people in the job they have right now, but rather they're thinking about some possible future for their own life. And to me, public service should be about service, like serving your community as a teacher, a firefighter, a police officer, serving in the military, serving as a first responder. Service should be about doing the job, not about thinking about what might be next.
You mentioned how you say you see people running for other parts of office as benefits for their own personal life. I just got to ask, what about, say, the president who does serve more than just the state people, but the American people themselves, as well as, U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate? or even something as local as just a local mayor or governor whose job is technically to do exactly what you mentioned, serve their people. What about where I got to ask, like, what kind of differentiates your definition of serving the people as a congressman versus others serving the people as a governor, mayor, etc.?
Yeah, I think whatever area you want to serve in is important. And although we think of these positions as higher, we think of being governor is higher than being city councilor, it's really about who you're representing, the population. So for me, this office, running for the U.S. Congress for the 5th District, is about the people who live in the 6 counties that comprise our district. And running for a different office, whether it's the governor of a state or a president, whether it's a Senate or a council position, that's about representing the people who are in the geographic area that corresponds to that particular activity, or the school community, or whatever the organization might be where they are represented. So to me, public service is about focusing on the population who you are offering to serve, and when you're elected to that role, focusing on that population, not on some job you might have in the future, not on some office you might run for down the line, but doing that job well while you have it.
Okay, I do have another question kind of relating to that previous question. If you were to not win the election or did win the election, would you want to serve for another term or join the next election, try again for the next 2 years?
I really haven't thought very much about what happens after November 5th. One of the strange things about an electoral process is that it's very horizon driven. I have a horizon of the election on November 5th, and so I like to say that come November 5th, I'm either going to have a job or have to get a job, because that's the nature of our system right now, is that you campaign for office, whatever the office might be, you campaign for it for a period of time, then there's an election and you find out whether you move forward and take the office or you don't. And so to me, I'm only focused on that horizon. If I win the election, will I seek re-election? I don't know. It depends on what I'm able to accomplish. I do think that people staying in office for a long period of time does create problems. Career politicians get separated from the everyday person. That's why I'm a big advocate of term limits as a way to make sure that we have fresh faces, fresh ideas in all branches and areas of government. But to me, the focus right now is the interview that I'm doing with you as journalists and with the people of our district as voters. I'm interviewing for a job, and on November 5th, everyone gets to decide which candidate they think is best for the job. And then once the interview process is over, those of us who don't get the job will stay behind, and one person who wins will move forward. But fundamentally, it's about preparing and speaking to the audience of voters, about why I think I'm the best person for this role.
Okay, so for new voters that just turned 18, why should they vote for you?
I think it's important to think about history and your role in it. The experience of voters up until this point, especially in our part of the country, has been that you really only had 2 choices, a Republican and a Democratic choice. And because of the nature of gerrymandering, everywhere in the country, including here in Indiana, one party tends to control each district or area, and that party tends to win over and over again. And as a result, that party doesn't focus much on listening to constituents outside of their own base. They don't focus much on anything other than fundraising for their own base, and they're responsive only to the people in their party. Now, that isn't always true, but it tends to be reinforced by the system. As a young person today, you have the opportunity to be part of history. We have not had this many choices in an election for Congress here in well over a decade. No one has run as an independent since 2010 in the 5th District. And to be an independent candidate, I had to go door to door, go to events, meet people individually, and collect over 6,000 individual signatures to be on the ballot. And if you're an 18-year-old voting for the first time, I would challenge you and say, who is most like you? Is it the person who's been part of the party for a long time, who has raised maybe millions of dollars, who has been a career politician, or is it the person who shows up at your high school and talks to people? Is it the person who knocks on doors in your community? I was over at the Jackrabbit Coffee Shop earlier having a bagel. I mean, I'm a person who is embedded and engaged in the Anderson community and all the communities that I serve. And if you're a young person today, you have to ask yourself this question. Do you want to keep doing the thing that has always been done? Or as they say, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And all we have done for the past who knows how many decades is vote for these party candidates. If you're a young person, you have the chance to be part of history and do something different. Make a real change. And if I've learned anything about young people, it's that they're ready for change. They're ready for a world that is better than the one they feel they're inheriting.
I've got to ask, speaking of communities, have you ever thought about going back to Texas to run for Congress there?
I haven't been in Texas in over 25 years other than to visit family. And Indiana's my home now. It's where my family is, it's where my spouse is. It's where I've worked for the past almost 2.5 decades. This is the place where I am home. And yeah, I was born elsewhere and I went to college elsewhere. But since I've been here, this is where I live. And I think everyone is from somewhere. And where you're from informs who you are. And I've learned a lot in my life in Texas and my schooling there. But I'm a Hoosier now, and I'm proud of it. And this is where I want to live the rest of my life.
All right. Do you have anything you would like to add, Noah?
No.
Do you have anything you would like to say, Mr. Slaughter?
Well, I want to thank both Noah and Jacob and everyone else here at Anderson and in the program for letting me be on the Tribecast. It's a great opportunity. And I think what you're doing is tremendously important. Not only are you learning how to interview people, ask difficult questions, find out what they're thinking, but you're also establishing the importance of this process for your fellow students. So thank you so much for the chance to be here, and thank you for asking good questions.
All right, thank you for being here. And I would just like to say thank you for watching, and always remember, forever proud, forever strong, forever Indians.